Look around you. Every single person you have ever met, every face in every crowd, every human being alive on this planet right now belongs to one species. Just one. Homo sapiens. You. But here's the thing nobody tells you. That is not how it was supposed to be. For most of human history, you were not alone. There were others, not aliens, not myths, other humans. Real, breathing, thinking, tool-making humans who walked the same earth, crossed the same rivers, hunted the same animals. And then, one by one, they vanished. The Neanderthals, the Denisovans, Homo erectus, Homo floresiensis. Gone. All of them. And only you remained. Why? That question has haunted scientists for over a century, and the answer, when you actually look at the evidence, is far stranger and far more unsettling than anything you were taught in school. To understand it, you have to go back. Not a few hundred years, not a few thousand. You have to go back roughly 300,000 years, to a world that looked almost like this one, but was shared. The Neanderthals had already been living in Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years by the time your ancestors arrived. They were not the hunched, dim-witted brutes you might picture. That image is wrong. Neanderthals had brains as large as yours, sometimes larger. They made tools. They buried their dead. There is evidence they used pigment, possibly for body paint or art. Researchers like João Zilhao have spent decades arguing that Neanderthals were cognitively sophisticated in ways we have consistently underestimated. They were not primitive. They were different. And then, deeper in Asia, there were the Denisovans. We only discovered them in 2010 from a fragment of finger bone found in a Siberian cave. A single bone. Yet the ancient DNA extracted from that fragment revealed an entire human population that had spread across Asia, possibly as far as Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Svante Pääbo, who won the Nobel Prize in 2022 for his work in ancient DNA, showed us that the Denisovans were as genetically distinct from Neanderthals as Neanderthals were from us. A completely separate branch of humanity, hiding in plain sight in a cave until a scientist found a finger. Further east, on the island of Flores in Indonesia, there was Homo floresiensis, nicknamed the Hobbit, a tiny human species, barely a meter tall, with a brain the size of a grapefruit, who somehow made tools, hunted pygmy elephants, and survived on that island for hundreds of thousands of years. They were still alive as recently as 50,000 years ago. And running through all of this, still surviving in isolated pockets of Asia, was Homo erectus, the great survivor, a species that had been walking the earth for nearly 2 million years. 2 million years. Your entire species has existed for 300,000. Homo erectus had been around more than 6 times longer than you have. By any measure, they were the success story. So what happened? Here's what the fossil record shows. Around 60 to 70,000 years ago, a group of modern humans left Africa. Not a massive army, probably a small band, maybe a few thousand individuals at most. And as they moved through the world, every other human species began to disappear. The timing is not a coincidence. For decades, the dominant explanation was simple. Your ancestors were smarter, better tools, better planning, better language. You outcompeted everyone else, and they simply could not keep up. This is called the replacement hypothesis, and for a long time, it felt satisfying. It made your ancestors the winners in a clean evolutionary race. But then, ancient DNA changed everything. When Pääbo and his team sequenced the Neanderthal genome and compared it to modern humans, they found something nobody expected. You carry Neanderthal DNA, right now, in your cells. If your ancestry is non-African, between 1 and 4% of your genome comes from Neanderthals. If you have ancestry from parts of East Asia or the Pacific, you carry Denisovan DNA too. Some populations in Papua New Guinea carry as much as 5% Denisovan ancestry. That means your ancestors did not simply replace the others. They met them. They lived alongside them. And they had children with them. The story is not a war. It is a merger, but only a partial one. And that is where it gets complicated. Because the other species still vanished. The Neanderthals were gone by around 40,000 years ago. Homo floresiensis disappeared around the same time modern humans arrived on Flores. Homo erectus vanished. The Denisovans exist today only as a ghost in your genome, their culture and language and faces unknown to us forever. If it was not pure replacement, and it was not pure interbreeding, then what actually happened? The honest answer is that it was probably all of the above, happening at different times in different places. Researcher Nick Longrich has argued that even small advantages in survival or reproduction, compounded over hundreds of generations, are enough to drive another species to extinction without any single dramatic event. You do not need a massacre. You just need to be slightly better at finding food, or slightly more resistant to a disease, or slightly more likely to survive a harsh winter. Do that consistently for 10,000 years, and the other group simply fades. There is also the question of population size. When modern humans left Africa, they brought something with them that the other species may not have had in the same way. Networks, trade, information sharing across long distances. There is archaeological evidence that modern humans were exchanging materials and ideas across hundreds of kilometers as far back as 100,000 years ago. Shells found far from the coast, pigments transported across mountain ranges, knowledge moving through social webs. Neanderthals, as far as we can tell, lived in smaller, more isolated groups. When a disaster hit, a bad winter, a volcanic eruption, a disease, they had fewer people to fall back on. Modern humans had larger networks to draw from, more resilience, more redundancy. But here is the part that should genuinely disturb you. We may never fully know how much of the other species' disappearance was driven by violence. There is some evidence. Cut marks on Neanderthal bones at some sites have been interpreted by some researchers as evidence of cannibalism. But the picture is murky. What we do know is that everywhere modern humans showed up, the others eventually disappeared. That pattern is hard to explain away entirely. And this is where the story stops being ancient history and starts being about you. Because you are the last one. Not just the survivor, the last. Every other branch of the human family tree is gone. And the loneliness of that, when you actually sit with it, is profound. You live in a world shaped by winners. The shelters you build, the languages you speak, the foods you grow, all of it reflects the choices and innovations of the one human species that made it. You will never know what a Neanderthal sounded like when they spoke, if they spoke in the way you do. You will never know what a Denisovan song sounded like, or whether they had songs. You will never know what Homo floresiensis thought when they looked up at the stars. Those worlds are gone. But here is the strange consolation hidden inside the science. They are not entirely gone from you. Every time researchers sequence another ancient genome, they find more traces, more interbreeding events, more populations mixing in ways we never imagined. Your DNA is a record of all those encounters. The 1 to 4% of your genome that came from Neanderthals includes genes that affect your immune system, your ability to fight certain pathogens, even how your skin and hair behave in cold climates. The Neanderthals did not disappear cleanly. They dissolved, partially, into you. You are not just the last human species. You are a mosaic of all of them. Geneticist David Reich, in his book on ancient DNA, describes the human family tree less as a branching tree and more as a tangled web. Populations meeting, merging, diverging, meeting again, across hundreds of thousands of years. The clean story of one species triumphantly replacing all others is not just wrong. It is the opposite of what the evidence shows. The real story is messier and more human in the deepest possible sense. Meetings across impossible distances. Children born between people who were different from each other in ways we can barely imagine. Cultures that almost certainly influenced each other, even if we cannot see how. And then, quietly, a fading. Not always violent, not always sudden. Sometimes just a gradual thinning, a shrinking of the group until there was no group left. And you, reading this now, are what remained. The next time you feel that particular human loneliness, the sense of being small in a vast and indifferent world, remember this. You come from a line of people who survived every ending, who met strangers who were almost human and found ways to connect, who carried forward not just their own genes, but fragments of everyone they encountered. You are the last human species, but you are not the only human story. You are carrying all of them.